Brandon Jones, the juicy meme of the NASCAR XFINITY Series. As you'll recall, I made a video when the news broke out that he was joining Joe Gibbs Racing last season. Let's just say that video didn't turn out very well. So I decided to give him some time, and with the NASCAR XFINITY Series at its midpoint, it's time to revisit the Georgia native. Has he improved in any sort of way? Has he kind of been one of those hit or miss drivers, or are the humiliations and mocking points amplifying to JJ Yeley standards? Only here on NRF, it's time to redirect to JGR signing of Brandon Jones and what has taken place over the past 2 seasons. Before the video starts, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so that you never miss an upload down the road. So after a dismal 2017 campaign, Richard Childress Racing was not happy with the Georgia native's performance. The 33 never finished inside the top 5 during those 2 seasons and missed the postseason in 2017 after a horrendous sophomore slump that saw Jones net an average finish in the 20s. As a result, the old man used the live man to mop any resemblance of Brandon Jones out of the seat, and Matt Tifft would take the funding from Tunity Surface Sunscreen to the team's full-time operation. In all seriousness, the RCR XFINITY program has been nothing but a hotbed for pay drivers at this point in time. Drivers such as John West Townley, Tim George Jr., and Brian Scott pretend to be top contenders, even though the finances are the only actions keeping their careers alive. It was probably for the better that Jones got exiled away, and despite becoming unemployed, he should be able to float around the NASCAR garage for a few more years. Who knows, maybe even a big break could be in the cards at a top-tier race team, and he can prove that he's a legit driver. Ultimately, it was fate for that big break to come. On October 10, 2017, it was announced that Brandon Jones would become the new wheelman of the number 19 for Joe Gibbs Racing. This race team won the NASCAR XFINITY Series championship with Daniel Suarez and has become a weekly contender even with Matt Tifft putting together mediocre results. Brandon Jones was at least competitive during his early seasons, and without a doubt the inferior ECR equipment was holding him back. A career resurgence should be in the works, and it wouldn't surprise me if he competes for wins and a championship for berth during the fall stages of the season. Come on, Brandon Jones, get it done. So as the green flag waved in Daytona and the season carried on, you would have never thought Brandon Jones moved to Joe Gibbs Racing. Through an entire 33-race season, driving arguably the best equipment, he only scored 2 top 5 finishes, one of which was at Talladega, where luck can play into the day. Meanwhile, Christopher Bell scored 8 wins and was in contention to win races on a weekly basis. Not to mention the same idiotic mistakes that ruined his reputation were once again present almost every time he got behind the wheel. Brandon Jones going into turn 1 at Texas side by side is like mixing bleach and vinegar. As a driver, you just pray to the racing gods that you make it through the next corner without heavy contact with the turn 2 wall. Now, of course, in today's NASCAR, it's common for drivers to have issues racing at a certain track or configuration, especially as a rookie driver. The problem is, this is year 3 for Brandon Jones, yet he races like Natalie Decker at 1.5 miles. To cap off the season, Brandon Jones was irrelevant during the postseason and was a quiet elimination in the first round. Heck, Ross Chastain, driving for a third-tier JD Motorsports car, put forth a better fight on the pavement. Anytime a 2015 Chevrolet Camaro manages to beat a JGR Toyota, there is a serious lack of driver talent behind the wheel. Meanwhile, I wonder how Matt Tifft is doing at Richard Childress. Well, would you look at that? He managed not only to outperform Brandon Jones in 2017, but his 6 top 5s, 19 top 10 finishes, and his advancement to the round of 8 were all better than the 19 this year. Not to mention, he earned a NASCAR Cup Series ride at Front Row Motorsports driving the number 36 Ford Mustang. Sounds like he already won the trade already. Luckily, in this situation, Coach Joe is smarter than the average team owner. He is the kind of guy that values performance behind the wheel and doesn't take mediocrity for an answer. Daniel Suarez learned that the hard way after he and Eris were shown the door after 2 seasons in the NASCAR Cup Series. Without a doubt, Brandon Jones will be out of a ride, as this one season showed the Georgia native just doesn't have the prowess to become a star in this league. They can wave Jones as well as sponsors Menards and OIO Networks goodbye and sign some in-house options to cover the season's operating budget. Unfortunately, firing Brandon Jones from the team would not only run the 19 team dry of funding, but the 20 car for Christopher Bell as well. Primary sponsor Rheem would have some heated tempers considering the company is run by Brandon's father, J.R. Jones. With GameStop on the verge of bankruptcy, the decade-long partnership would be game over following the 2018 season. Getting rid of Brandon Jones would force JGR to close at least one of its 3 car entries and quite possibly lose a generational talent to a rivaling manufacturer or organization. Seeing how Kyle Larson and Joey Logano turned out, they certainly don't want to lose another transcended driver to another team in the garage. Though as Brandon Jones is stuck on a top-tier team, some transactions were made in the offseason. Jeff Mendering, after getting fired from the 00 team, would take over the War Wagon and decision-making for the 19 Toyota Supra. Even with the colossal choke-up during the Xfinity Series finale, he is still a solid crew chief in this sport. Maybe this could be the answer, but I'm not getting my hopes up. After all, this is Brandon Jones we're speaking of. Despite the skeptics of a sophomore campaign, look at this! Brandon Jones has stepped up his game, netting 2 top 5s at Daytona, Atlanta, and he is working on another with just a few laps remaining at Las Vegas. Jeff Mendering is providing a strong head crew chief presence on the 19 team, and it is paying off with consistency. This will help Brandon Jones finally mature as a driver, and honestly, he might earn a few victories this season. Just keep it clean in the closing laps, and you will have some momentum to build upon over the next 30 races.
Hard hit for Brandon Jones.
Oh, he hit very hard.
And Brandon Jones completely runs out of talent once again. All optimism of a great campaign smashes the safer barrier, and the 19 has free-fallen after that successful start. The Juniper team has become disconnected from performing on the track, netting 0 top 5s and 5 top 10 finishes during that stretch. This is coming from an organization that has 7 wins on the year, the most laps led of any organization, and 3 pole awards through the midpoint of the 2019 campaign. Even worse, Harrison Burton has outperformed Brandon Jones during both his career NASCAR XFINITY Series starts this season. This is a driver that has struggled in the Gander Outdoors Truck Series and carries far less experience as a rookie driver. It is never a good sign when an 18-year-old straight out of high school not only crashes less but also greatly outperforms driving similar equipment. To make things more catastrophic, ever since the season opener at Daytona, he has dropped from 1st to 12th in the Xfinity Series standings, and he remains on the cutoff just to make the postseason. While it is always good to make the playoffs, just remember with the closure of Ganassi and Roush, it only leaves around 10 to 12 competitive teams. Sitting 91 points ahead of Greg Gaulding, driving a borderline average 08 car is no accomplishment, and it's almost embarrassing at this stage of the game. With a bad fast Toyota Supra, Brandon Jones can do the bare minimum in terms of results and performance, and he will still make the playoffs by a large margin. So overall, through 1.5 seasons in JGR equipment, Brandon Jones has netted 4 top 5s, 24 top 10 finishes, and has led 224 laps out front. For a comparison, JJ Yeley, who is arguably considered the worst full-time Grand National driver for JGR, scored 13 top 5s, 34 top 10 finishes, and 186 laps out front. Now, while JJ Yeley raced in the league as a Cup Leech in 2006, he was able to improve during his sophomore campaign. He was able to grow success with the Home Depot team jumping 6 positions in the standings from 2005 to 2006 and building up his average finish from 19.7 to 13.1. In contrast, Brandon Jones has seen his average finish drop 2 positions and sits worse in the standings than the season prior. Not to mention as well, the mid-2000s consisted of Leech drivers competing for points, which means JJ Yeley could have finished higher without the more experienced racers. Meanwhile, the 19 can't even beat 2 watered-down ECR rides and a JRM satellite team in only its 3rd full-time campaign. In no way, shape, or form has Brandon Jones shown us any potential or promise despite driving the best equipment in the NASCAR garage and having a sensational teammate to get notes off of. He isn't performing up to the bar Joe Gibbs has put forth, and in his 3rd year we're still seeing rookie mistakes and inconsistencies that are embarrassing to watch and are hurting his reputation. In a way, Brandon Jones is essentially the polar opposite of Ross Chastain. If he were to miss the postseason or wreck out in 5 to 6 races, Coach Joe likely wouldn't do anything because his hands are tied with all the money J.R. Jones is offering to fund 2 full-time race cars. In this state of NASCAR where money means a lot, this is unfortunately the best case scenario short-term and long-term for Joe Gibbs Racing. The only end to this era relies in Christopher Bell moving up to the NASCAR Cup Series or another paid driver coming from the Truck Series or ARCA to help fund the bill. Here in June, it's looking more and more like Christopher Bell will need a 3rd year in Xfinity as there are no openings at Joe Gibbs Racing and Levine Family Racing doesn't seem like they are willing to open a 2nd race team. Until they can place him in a top-tier team, the sponsorship services of Rheem will be needed, which will give Brandon Jones more seat time for the foreseeable future.
I still go to Taco Bell, drive through, raw as hell. I don't care, I'm still real. No matter how many records I sell. After the show, after the Grammys, I like to go cool out with the family, sipping, reminiscing on days when I had a mustache.
So anyways, this is NRF signing out. And just remember, life's a beach and then you drive.